What if I told you that the most lovable, kind-hearted cowboy on one of America's most iconic television shows left this world far too soon? If you grew up watching Bonanza, chances are you remember him. Hoss. The big guy with the even bigger heart. The gentle giant who could make you laugh at the silliest little thing, who could bring a tear to your eye with just a look, who somehow managed to be the glue that held the Cartwright family, and maybe even the whole show, together. But here's the question, do you really know the story of the man behind Hoss? Dan Blocker. The man whose warmth and charm reached beyond the screen and into the hearts of millions. That's what we're here to do today. To look back at his life, his career, his quiet kindness, and a few incredible little moments that even his biggest fans might not know about. By the time this story's over, you're going to feel like you knew him just a little better. So, let's go back to where it all began. Dan Blocker was born in 1928 in a small Texas town called DeKalb. And right from the very beginning, he stood out. Not just because of who he'd become, but because of his size. On the day he was born, doctors and nurses couldn't believe their eyes. He weighed 14 pounds. 14. That made him one of the biggest newborns in Bowie County history. People were talking about baby Dan before he even left the hospital. And the truth is, he never stopped being the big guy. But here's the thing you might not expect. Even though he was big and strong, Dan was never the type to throw his weight around. Not even close. He was a gentle boy. Teachers loved having him in their classrooms. His classmates wanted to sit next to him. He was polite, soft-spoken, quick to laugh, and even quicker to help. It's funny, when you hear people who knew him back then talk about him, nobody ever says, "Oh, he was tough," or "he scared me." They say, "He was the nicest guy you'd ever meet." And believe it or not, acting wasn't even on his radar at first. Not at all. Dan's dream was actually to become a teacher. So he went to Sul Ross State Teachers College and earned his degree in education. He started teaching high school English and drama. And just imagine being a teenager and walking into class to see your teacher towering over you, all 6'4" of him, wearing that warm, slightly shy smile. That was Dan. But life had more in store for him. When the Korean War broke out, Dan was drafted into the army. He served with honor and earned a Purple Heart for wounds he received in combat. He saw hard things over there, harder than most of us will ever have to face. But just like everything else in his life, he handled it with quiet strength. He never bragged about his service. He never even liked to talk much about it. When he came back home, Dan went back to school to earn his master's degree. He moved to California and settled into a modest little house with his wife and kids. Money was tight, though, and with a growing family, he needed to find extra income. That's when he started picking up small acting gigs. Not because he wanted to be a star, but just because it paid. But here's the thing, when Dan walked onto a set, people noticed. Sure, his size made him hard to miss, but it was more than that. It was his presence. His kindness. The way he could make everyone in the room feel at ease. People just liked being around him. Casting directors started calling more and more. He picked up small parts in westerns and comedies, usually playing the big, strong guy. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious. These little roles started adding up, one by one. And then, he got the call that would change his life. The role was for a new western show called Bonanza. The character? Eric Hoss Cartwright, the middle son of the powerful Cartwright family. Hoss wasn't just supposed to be big. He was supposed to be kind. Funny. Innocent in a way that made you root for him. And boy, did Dan deliver. Week after week, Dan brought Hoss to life in a way that no one else could have. Hoss wasn't just the big brother on the Ponderosa, he was the heart of the family. The one who always tried to see the good in people. The one who'd jump in front of a bullet for someone he loved without even thinking twice. Fans couldn't get enough of him. Every Sunday night, millions of Americans tuned in to watch Haas ride across the ranch, solve problems, help neighbors, and share a laugh with his brothers. Dan's warmth just radiated through the screen. It didn't feel like he was acting. It felt like he was Haas. Behind the scenes, though, Dan was even more impressive. He was a devoted husband to his wife, Dolphia, and a loving father to their 4 kids. He kept his feet firmly on the ground. No big Hollywood mansion. No wild parties. Just a man who loved his family and his work. In an interview, Dan once said, "I've never been much interested in fame. I've always wanted to be loved instead." And he was. Loved by his family. Loved by his co-workers. Loved by millions of fans all over the world. And then, came the tragedy that nobody saw coming. In May of 1972, Dan checked into the hospital for what was supposed to be a routine gallbladder surgery. It was considered a simple procedure. Nothing risky. But during his recovery, a blood clot formed. And just like that, he was gone. Dan Blocker was only 43 years old. The news hit fans like a punch to the gut. People who had grown up watching him, who felt like they knew him, were devastated. His castmates were even more heartbroken. Michael Landon, who played his younger brother Little Joe, said it best, "It felt like the family fell apart. And you could feel it on the show." Bonanza was never quite the same after Dan's death. The Ponderosa felt emptier. The spark was dimmer. But here's the thing about Dan. Even though his life was cut short, the way he lived continues to inspire people to this day. He showed us that you can be strong and kind at the same time. That you can be big without being scary. That you don't need to chase fame if you already have love. Even decades later, people still talk about him. Fans still smile when they think of Haas. Still tell stories about how he made them laugh. Still say things like, "They just don't make them like that anymore." And here's a little fun fact you might not know. Dan's son, Dirk Blocker, followed in his father's footsteps and became an actor too. He plays Hitchcock on the hit show Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So in a way, Dan's spirit is still shining on our screens. There are so many little stories about Dan that show just what kind of man he was. People on set would talk about how he used to quietly donate to charities. How he'd take time to encourage young actors just starting out. How he treated everyone the same, from the biggest star on set to the brand new lighting guy. Always a smile. Always a kind word. That's just who he was. So what can we learn from Dan Blocker's story? Maybe it's this: kindness lasts longer than fame. Being a good person is worth more than being a big name. And maybe, just maybe, the way you make people feel is what they'll remember most about you. Think about it. When you remember Haas, you don't just remember a cowboy. You remember a friend. A brother. Someone who always tried to do the right thing, no matter what. Someone who made you feel good just by being there. That's the magic of Dan Blocker. He wasn't just playing a character. He was sharing his heart with all of us. So now, I want to hear from you. Which part of Dan's story touched you the most? Was it how he started out as a teacher? How he quietly gave back? Or just how he made you feel every time you saw him on screen? Tell me in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your memories of Haas. And if you enjoy stories about classic TV stars and what they left behind, be sure to check out our next video, all about what happened to the rest of the Bonanza cast after the show ended. If you liked this little trip down memory lane, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps more people find these stories. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. That way, you'll never miss another heartwarming story about the stars who shaped our screens and our lives. Because at the end of the day, kindness is always worth sharing. And you know, I can't help but imagine. If Haas could see us all remembering him today, talking about him, smiling as we think back, he'd probably flash that big, goofy smile of his and say, "Well now, that's mighty kind of ya." And you know what? We couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for watching.